Shall we get that? So hopefully you can see our screen. So as you'll see, our main topic of today is the job retention scheme. So let us get started. So we're going to cover today who can claim, what employees you can claim for, how to work out what you can claim, what you'll need to be making that claim, and then the claim itself. Don't know quite what I've done there. So the main thing to start off with is this scheme at the moment is in place from the 1st of March through to the end of June. They have said that this may be extended. We do not know whether it will or not, but if we obviously stay in the same length of time that we need to be in isolation, then it may be extended. We're not going to actually see any payments from this until the end of April at the earliest. It's completely new. It's something that's not been in place before. So we are at a point of having to work with the tax office, and they're trying to get things into place as quickly as possible. But unfortunately, obviously, these things take a little bit of time. So from your point of view, you just need to be planning your cash flows potentially for the next 4 weeks, as you will have to be able to be funding this for the next couple of weeks, and then look at making the claim and getting the funds back to you. Now, obviously, this may mean you need to look at cash flow planning. It may mean you need to kind of have a look at whether you need any sort of business interruption loan, just to help tide you over the next 6, 8, 12 weeks. In terms of what you'll need, we'll go through the claim in a moment, but the general premise is you will be able to get 80% of their usual monthly wage costs up to $2,500, plus then on top of that, the employer's national insurance contribution and the minimum automatic enrolment pension contributions. So that's the 3% that as an employer you will have been paying. This is open to every single employer in the country. As long as you have a PAYE scheme, you will be able to make a claim under this. The only probably key thing to be aware of is you have to have had that employee on your system as of the 28th of February. If you've had any new joiners since then, they're not covered. If you make any changes this month, arguably it is not covered. So there is a slight little gap there, a slight small hole. However, it is hopefully covering the majority of everybody. It is just anyone who unfortunately has started new jobs, had to move around, finished in their job, that will kind of have a few issues from that point of view. So in terms of who can claim, it's very open. Businesses, charities, recruitment agencies, public, anyone and everybody on a PAYE scheme as of the 28th of February, and they need to have a UK bank account, which hopefully for most businesses is a little bit of a given. Now, where a company is being taken under the management of an administrator, they'll still be able to do it. So I don't think most of our listeners on today are going to be going into administration, touch wood, but it will kind of still cover that sort of time period. So sorry, this one's a bit small, trying to get all the information together. In terms of who you can claim for all your employees. So we're talking full-time people, part-time people, potentially agency contractors, those on flexible or 0 hours. It also covers if you've had to make anyone redundant in the last couple of weeks or lay them off with no work, arguably from February through to since the 28th of February, so this month, because I know some people have literally gone from very busy to a cliff drop that the next day they've got nothing. If you've had to make anybody redundant or lay them off, they can be rehired and they can fall into this scheme, which potentially may hopefully help tide the storm to move you forward. Now, it's for anybody who is an employee. So if they're on an agency contract, they may still be able to claim under this scheme as long as they're not working. Now, to be eligible for this, you can't take any work for the employer. So this isn't oh, I've got no work this week, but next week I've got some work, and then, oh, can you just do this one shift this day? If they're going to be furloughed, they are furloughed. So the question for some businesses may be, if you've got some work, but not enough work for everyone, do you actually furlough half your team and keep half your team working? Now, obviously, there is the kind of team spirit, the kind of keeping everyone motivated, keeping everyone together. But then there is also the kind of management side of the team and the employment law side of things, which is making sure you are agreeing with the team what you are going to be doing. Some people's contracts with their employees will have layoff terms, will have other bits. Most contracts probably won't have a furlough clause in them, as it's something that's literally been created in the last week or two. Now, in terms of what an employee can and cannot do, they can't undertake any work that is generating any income. However, they can do things like potentially training. So if you've got potentially apprentices or people doing qualifications, they can continue their qualifications and that side of things for it. Now, I know some people have potentially looked at going on to short hours. Now, the issue with going on to short hours is that they're still working. So this is where you may end up saying the ones who you said to the whole team will go to short hours so that we can keep everyone working. It may be you need to talk to your team and go, right, rather than short hours for everyone, half of you we want to put back onto full-time hours, half of you we're going to furlough, and then have that conversation whether you decide particular team members that you want to put in either camp, or whether you ask for volunteers of who would like to be in which camp. While they are furloughed, you will still need to do their payroll as normal. You'll still need to calculate their normal tax and national insurance contributions and other areas. Now, anyone hired, as we can see down towards bottom, after the 28th of February cannot be furloughed. So if you are potentially have some newer team members, you may want to keep them working if you can to help them, and furlough some of the more established team members, which then hopefully keeps the whole team together as an option. One thing that is very clear is you don't have to do everybody. In order to keep the business going, you may still have some work, just not enough work. So on that basis, you can do some of your team and not all of your team. Now, if you've already got someone on unpaid leave and they're on unpaid leave before the 28th of February, unless they were expected to come back and then you can furlough them afterwards, if they were expected to continue on unpaid leave, then up until the point that they're expected, they cannot be furloughed and switched around. Similar things with your statutory sick pay. If they're on sick leave or self-isolating, they will just be on statutory sick pay. But then after this, they can look at being furloughed, which obviously from an income perspective will probably put them onto a higher salary, because statutory sick pay is obviously that bit lower. If your employee has more than one job, they can be furloughed from each job. Each job is separate. So if they've got 2 jobs or 3 jobs, it just matters in your job if you're furloughing them. They can still work for any other employees that they are working for, or they may be furloughed by all of them. And the cap itself, the 2,500, actually applies to each employer. So on that basis, if you're one employer of several for that employee, you can keep going, do what you need to do, and then it's up to the other employers to make their decision on how they deal with this situation. Now, obviously, in recent weeks, the government's announced some volunteering with the NHS, and there's possibly going to be other bits and pieces. If they do that, that does not impact your kind of employee as a furloughed person. The only question mark potentially would be whether you need to bring them back because work picks up and you can take them off the being furlough, or whether they can kind of keep doing that and it doesn't have any implications. As I've already mentioned, you can do training courses whilst they're furloughed. Any training courses, you'll just need to make sure that they're paid at least national minimum wage or national living wage, depending on their age and what they're doing. Now, for most people, that's not a problem. For some people who are on lower earnings, that might be an issue. The main thing is, if you're only going to be paying the 80%, make sure that the hours that they are working, that they will be able to be subsidised a little extra for those hours that are working if it's not at the minimum wage. If employees are on maternity leave, paternity leave, shared parental leave, all of the normal statutory things that happen for different employees at different times of their life, arguably they're still eligible in the same way. It will still work in the same way. At the end of that period, they will just go back onto the normal process. When they come onto the normal process, you'll decide whether you want them to be working or whether you want to furlough that person. So there's not really any discrepancies. The main question will be what date they actually take it. Do they start earlier? Do they start later? And that's just working with those individuals, the women in practice or the fathers at that point in time. So how do we work this out? So this is a scheme where you'll have to cover the cost initially and then make a claim to claim that 80% back at a later stage. The grant will be the lower of 80% of the employee's regular wage, or £2,500 per month. So there is this cap at 2.5. So you may have no employees who are paid more than that salary, or you may have some that are paid over that salary. On top of that, you'll get this employee's national insurance contribution, which will be dependent on the employee. So if you've got apprentices or you've got people doing training or under certain age groups, it might be there is 0% to pay. For most people, there'll be the normal 13.8% that is chargeable to employers. You also get on top of that the automatic enrolment employee pension contributions. So that is a maximum of 3% that will be covered. Obviously, fees, commission and bonuses are not included. So if this is the time of year you'd normally be doing something like that, they're not covered at this stage. All I would suggest is any of those things that you may need to consider, look at doing later in the year. So then you can have a look at what is relevant at that stage after the crisis is all done and sorted. Now, one thing that has been made very clear is you can either pay just the 80% or you can pay the full salary. That becomes an employer's choice. Obviously, if you're only paying the 80%, you'll need to do the calculation based on the full salary to find out what the 80% is and then process the 80% through your payroll, not the full salary. If you process the full salary through your payroll, that would indicate that you're paying the full amount and you will be topping up the 20%. Now, for a lot of businesses I've spoken to so far, it's whether you want to pay the full salary or pay the 80%. Now, having spoken to a few, I know a lot are looking at paying the 80% at this to preserve cash flow at this point. There is the option at a later stage in the year when things tidy up that if you did want to give team members a bonus or make extra payment, you can do so later in the year, which may bring them back to where they would have been had they got their full salary at the time. The question really comes down for a lot of businesses on the cash flow management and making sure you can afford the payments and covering off what you're going to be getting through the grant claim system. The employees' national insurance side and the pension side of things, they will be sending more guidance out as it becomes live. So we're expecting to see that in the next couple of weeks as they get this side of things up and running. The main reason for the delay is for payrolls. We tend to be paying them money or reducing the payment we make to them. However, obviously at this point, they're going to be giving us money and they've not got the information to be paying us money at this moment in time. That is what's being set up. So in terms of making the calculation, which I've just got a question on this, so hopefully this next little bit will cover that question. For full-time and part-time salaried employees, so someone who you've got a regular salary that they get paid every month, you'll take the actual salary before tax as of the 28th of February and then calculate that using the 80% threshold, excluding any fees, commission, bonuses. Now, for full-time, part-time, monthly salaries, it should be a relatively easy process to work things through. As you start to get more complications, whether it be weekly, fortnightly, quarterly, annual things, there is a slight tweak that we need to just be doing. So they have set out criteria here, which is employees whose hours pay varies. So for these, we've got a couple of different things that we need to consider. We need to be looking at the prior 12 months. And you can claim the higher of either the same month's earnings from the previous year. So we're looking at last February, last March, or the average monthly earnings for the 19-20 tax year. So we're looking last April through to this March. What would the average have been? Now, obviously, not everyone will have been potentially with you for a year. And if that's the case, then we're just looking at averaging it out over the months that they have actually been working. If they only started in February, we'll just have to use their pro rata figure for earnings so far to claim. So there's a few different bits there. In terms of 0 hours contracts, I'd probably be saying we're looking at whose pay varies here and looking at what they had last year potentially, or what their average monthly would be each month, because they are looking at variations. For most of the different bits, we're looking at their contracted hours. So for the 0 hours, we'd be looking at what they're actually working on the average. If they're working additional hours, I know I've seen notes that potentially if they do a standard of 15 hours a week and then the rest of it's overtime, then potentially only the 15 hours per week would be covered under this scheme, because that's the contracted hours, not maybe the 60 hours that they actually end up working. So there is a few discrepancies there from that point of view that we're just pinning down to make sure we've got the exact information at the moment. So we'll cover directors shortly because they have a few quirks to them in themselves. Now, employees' national insurance, that is on top of the actual salary that is paid. So if you say, for example, someone's claiming 2,000, just getting my calculator out, as their salary per month, 2,000 80% means you'd get your 1,600. That 1,600, you would look at calculating the employer's national insurance on it, the 3% of the income above the lower qualifying amount to get your pension contribution. Now, the question comes, obviously, as you may realise, we're just approaching the 5th of April, probably Sunday, I think that is, and national living wage, national minimum wage changes on Sunday. What they have said about this side of things is that they'll only be entitled to national minimum wage, national living wage for any hours that they're actually working. So if they're furloughed, it will be based on their salary as it was, whether that was national minimum wage or not. It will only be the 80%. And as we've already said, they can do training in bits and pieces. And if they're doing training, the time spent for that may need to be subsidised slightly to make sure that they're getting the national living wage, national work minimum wage. Now, if we move on to what you'll need to make the claim, now the main thing to just remember is you will have some sort of employment contract in place with your employees. So whatever is agreed needs to be agreed in writing. There are many HR professionals and many employment solicitors who potentially can help you, and there is a lot of information out there on what to include in those letters. If you need any assistance, please let me know and we can look at sending just kind of the key points out so that you know what you need to be including in that correspondence. The main thing is you're agreeing it in writing, which I appreciate. You're probably not in the same location as your team at this point in time, but even just email correspondence, it's giving evidence of what has been agreed so that you're both on the same page. Things that you'll need will be your PAYE reference, number of employees being furloughed, claim period, amount you're claiming, bank account details so they can send you the money, and then the contact name and phone number. The minimum length that they're saying is you'll be able to do it every 3 weeks. So for anyone who's on a weekly salary, that means you'll have to be able to fund that many weeks payroll. Anyone on a monthly, that shouldn't be a problem because obviously it's every month. So there is time to put the different bits and pieces together. So after you've received the money on the first claim, hopefully you've got the cash flow to run the next payroll, you've got the funds to pay that payroll, and then you'll get the reclaim to start a gentle flow of money coming through. You'll need to have your calculations. I know we are putting together our summaries and our spreadsheets so that we can make sure we've got all the details of how those calculations are going to be done. And the main thing there is if you're doing your own payroll, make sure you've got the information, make sure you've got the details of how you've come up with the claim amount. The reason being, they can come back and potentially audit it at a later stage to check that you have actually claimed the right thing, not the wrong thing. And if you've overclaimed, they'll probably likely come back and ask you for the money back. If you've underclaimed, whether they will pay the extra money, that is a different question. But the main thing is so that you can ensure that you're not going to suddenly find you've got a bill at the end of the day to pay back. So as we've just said, the claim will be at least every 3 weeks, which is the minimum length an employee can be furloughed for. So you've got to at least furlough them for 3 weeks. You can obviously furlough them for longer. It may be you want to set a date when you will review people. So maybe you've furloughed them for the next 4 weeks, and in 3 weeks' time you'll review whether or not you need to continue that process or whether you can bring them back into the group. When HMRC have received the claim, they'll arrange to pay the money back direct into your bank account. So the main thing is you just need to keep running your payroll as normal. If you know what is going to be coming, you can actually potentially run it in advance so you can put in the claim, and when the money starts coming out, you may be able to put the claim in before you need to make the payment so you can get the money back through. So there is options for that as it starts coming in and happening. You must pay the employee all the grant that you receive for their gross pay. The idea is this is not for making us money, it's to help us secure our team and make sure that we are keeping everyone arguably employed rather than having to make them redundant. When the scheme ends, so at the minute at the 30th of June, when the scheme ends, we'll go back to the normal employment contract, and then that'll be a matter of looking at whether you go to the layoff provisions, whether you terminate contract and have to make your employees redundant. Obviously, it may be this scheme gets extended, it may be it doesn't get extended, and we may need to be looking at things like that. Obviously, as time goes on, we'll see what happens, but the normal employment position doesn't change. So if you do find some of your customers unfortunately don't survive this, and your workload is definitely going to be reduced after this whole crisis has ended, it may be, even though they're furloughed, at some point you may need to make the decision that unfortunately you've lost some of your clients, so therefore you need to make someone redundant. That just follows the normal process that you would normally have had to follow in times of difficulty. Everything still follows, so if they do get sick and they let you know, then they go to the normal statutory sick entitlement. If someone finds out they're expecting, which I think from reading many a report, they're expecting a few newborns to be arriving in 9 months' time, with everyone being at home, all these sorts of things still fit in and still fit with the current rules that are in place. It is just this help to, I suppose, stop everyone, making everyone redundant at this exact moment in time. When the scheme finishes, they'll close it, but they will finish all the remaining claims before they close the scheme. So it's just really making sure you get your claims in as soon as you can, so that it just makes sure everything works from your cash flow point of view. Now, income tax and employee national insurance, everything will still be liable to the same thing. You will still need to potentially make your income tax and national insurance payments as normal, and the employee's national insurance. Now, with the grant, hopefully this will help to fund part of that, because obviously you will be getting the 80%, which will include tax and national insurance, and you'll be getting some money towards the employee's national insurance. So theoretically, as long as everything is flowing, you'll still be able to make sure that everything is still covered. That hopefully helps from a cash flow point of view, because it means you're not going to be behind on these payments as we get out of this difficult period. Now, from a tax treatment point of view, so how this will all come together after the end of the day, this will come into your accounts as income. So all the grant will come in and show as other income in your accounts, and then that will be matched off by your employee cost. So by the fact that they're giving you this grant, it's not additional profit, it's really just kind of covering the costs of the employee costs. Obviously, we're probably expecting your turnover to come down, your income. So theoretically, it shouldn't have particularly any impact on any corporation tax or income tax point of view. It's really just to secure your employees and hopefully secure your business through this difficult period of time. Now, in terms of what you can do, it's really going to be cash flow planning. We know this money is going to be coming. Can you afford your payroll this month? Can you afford your payroll next month? On the basis that we know money's coming hopefully by the end of April, but will you need to pay your salaries before the end of April? We are going to be there helping people make sure they're calculating things, making sure that you're doing the right things in terms of getting the information to your employees, and will assist in doing those furlough calculations to make sure you're claiming the right amounts. Now, we will be doing more calls as different things come out and as further information, depending how much, how little there is. So if there is extra questions and other things, we will be trying to cover those either in our newsletters or more calls like this, so that hopefully it gives you that forum to ask questions and make sure you're understanding how things fit together. So on that basis, let me jump on to some of the questions that I know I have had so far. So one of them is to do with NHS osteopaths can stay open for emergency cases, and anyone who without treatment would seek help from their GP. So we're uncertain whether we're able to claim if we do stay open. Now, I know I have read something on NHS that the NHS will continue paying to care providers for the NHS payments. However, the only issue is if you have private work and NHS work, you may have to make a decision which you actually decide to continue doing, on the basis that if you keep doing your NHS work, they are expecting you to cover your employees' salaries and not furlough your employees, which may in itself be an issue, because depending if your NHS work is a lot lower than your private work, it may be better to say we're going to have to close down the NHS side of things for now, furlough our employees so you can retain your business. There is a few quirks there with if you are working with the NHS side of things. If we need to look at that in any more detail, give us a call and we can have a look to see how that fits together, because I know any medical side of things, if you're working on doing NHS things, there is a few complications in the matters. So for 0 hours employees, as far as I can see, that would fall into the variable hours side of things. And in terms of the variable hours, that would be looking at the last 12 months, looking at what their average salary is over that time period. And if it's weekly rather than monthly, you would look at the weekly pay, multiply it up to the 12 months, see what the 12 months figure is, and then calculate it back down to what the weekly is. So there may be a little extra calculation in there, but hopefully it does mean you're still getting the same benefit. It's just that you are tweaking things slightly to cover your pay cycle. I'm assuming that's how you've read it, Nick.
Yeah, that's right. It's a very awkward area. Makes it a little messy to find out exactly where people stand, but that is it. It's either looking at an equivalent period in the previous tax year, or arriving at an average over the whatever months are available. And if it's only people who've been working for a short time and a seasonal work, it could throw out some odd figures. They did mention with seasonal work that it may be the equivalent period for the previous year, may be more applicable than an average. What I'm thinking of is people who may be working in, particularly in school holidays time, with Easter coming up. Their Easter working time may be considerably different to, say, some period like November or February. So looking at the two bases and finding the one that's most suitable.
Okay, so next question I've got is, as a director and part of payment is PAYE, do we only get 80% of that, or is it based on what we submitted on our self-assessment? So as a director, with how many of us have structured our pay, it's very much based on we receive a low salary and higher dividends. Unfortunately, for this method of payment at this point in time, it's not the greatest method. It's just one of those things. It works from a tax point of view in these difficult times. If you're getting a 715 salary, you'll only be able to claim on the grant funding 80% of that. The dividends do not get taken into account whatsoever. It is just literally the PAYE going through the payroll scheme each month. We will be looking at making that claim for people, for any directors that can furlough themselves. Now, I was reading something only this morning because it's one of the questions I think me and Nick have both been trying to get the answer to. Can a director furlough? Yes, a director can furlough. If you're an only director, can you furlough? And the answer is still yes. So if you're a consultant, you cannot work because all your clients are pretty much closed up shop. They said, we won't be in touch for the next 6, 8, 12 weeks, whatever it may be. You can furlough yourself as a only director business, and you can still do your director's duties. So they are seeing it as two separate roles. One is an employee, one is your director's duties. It may be where there's multiple directors that you furlough some of your directors and leave one person in charge doing arguably employee duties and also the director's duties. which therefore means for those directors, you'll be able to claim the 80%. The main thing is to let us know if we do your payroll, so we know which directors we need to be claiming that furlough for, and then it goes into the calculation for the claim. So hopefully that gives some positive news, because I know I've been reading a lot where it's saying, can they, can't they? Yes, they can. The main thing is they won't be doing any work for the company. It's the same as what is in place for every other employee. The only other thing is you can do the director's duties. So things like signing your account, signing paperwork that you need to do on behalf of the company as a director, you can still be doing those things. It is just arguably you can't be seen to be working for the business. So income generating work. You can be doing training, because as said specifically, if you're doing training and things like that, you can be doing that side of things. So maybe you can kind of get all your team and any of the directors, apart from one person, to a furlough position. So in essence, the company's only potentially got to pay one person's salary, and everybody else can be claiming the 80% grant. For directors, I'd probably still say you may want to still put through the full salary, and just kind of maybe from a cash flow point of view, you might not pay the full 715 or whatever the figure is you're being paid, and just pay yourself the 80% as it comes through as a grant. That means the rest of that will just sit on your director's loan account, and you can take that money when the cash is available to take. So it doesn't disappear, it just sits there till later in the year, when hopefully it goes business back to you, back as normal, and then you can claim that money back off your company. So the idea being to maintain the cash flow in the business, so you can kind of keep things going up until the point where we get back to a bit more normality with life. Anything to add on that you've kind of seen from the director's position, Nick?
No, they sort of tied it in a bit with the self-employment over the weekend as well, in that you can, the self-employment can be seen to be doing a bit of work to keep things ticking over, but will still get assistance. But a director, they've separated the administration of the company side of the work with the income generating side, so that as long as you're not on the income generating side, then you are able to claim and just report the pay through the payroll in the normal way. And as you say, irrespective of whether it's actually paid out or not.
The calculation is, I've got a question, can you confirm the calculation of 80% is on the net salary? No, it's on the gross salary. So it's the gross salary that you're calculating the 80%, and then the 80% is in essence including tax and national insurance, which would go through the payroll in the normal way and be deducted in the normal way. So we've spoken about directors, so hopefully if there is any other director specific questions, then please do put some more up. I think this one was what about directors, which hopefully you're happy we've covered. Timing of claims, you referred to claiming every 3 weeks. Does it have to be that? What if everyone is on monthly salary? Based on the 3 weeks, I think that's the minimum they're expecting. If you're on monthly salary, I'd possibly be saying you'll be doing it monthly. Depending on when you run the salary, it may be you can run it slightly earlier, do this payroll, because if you know everyone's furloughed, it's probably easier to do the salaries because you know what the position is going to be. On that basis, you can potentially run it earlier than you'd normally run it, which therefore means the claim can be put in, which potentially may mean that you get the cash from HMRC before you have to pay it, or if you don't, there's a very short time lag for getting that money to cover it. The main thing that they're going to be using to confirm what is being paid is going to be the RTI submission. So when you've done your payroll, done the FPS, done the EPS if required, all those normal things that get done on the payroll, that gives them that information to know what is happening with those employees. So on that basis, they will then know that, yes, you're making a claim for Mr. Blogs, Mrs. Blogs, Miss Blogs. So they'll be able to see, yes, they're an employee, yes, they're an employee. We don't exactly know the full detail of what is going on the claim, whether they will want employee names, employee numbers, what you're claiming for, or whether they'll just go, what is the claim? Tell me the figure. We just don't quite know what the application process is going to be. That is what we'll be finding out, hopefully, in the next couple of weeks. So when we do find that out, we'll probably look at doing a video call just to let people know how the claim is working, so that anyone who does it themselves is okay to do it. Anyone who we work with, we'll be looking at helping with the claim anyway. And anyone who may be doing their own payroll, if they want help with the claim, we're here. We're looking at trying to help keep your businesses alive and your livelihoods going, so that we can all be in a good position when we get out the other side of this. Can we still take dividends? Yes. If there are profits in the business, there is no reason not to take a dividend. The main thing I think both Nick and I have been looking at recently is it's going to very much be all about cash flow. It's going to be about keeping enough cash in your bank to cover your bills, to cover what you need to pay out, whether that be a business expense or a personal expense. So from that point of view, the next couple of months, it's going to be very much about managing the cash. If there is profits there, there is no reason profits can't be taken out as dividends, as far as I can see, unless you've got any other feedback on that side of things, Nick.
No. I mean, that's it. Really is preserving as much as possible. I mean, clearly the funding is going to be there, but it's going to be a time lag before it actually comes through. Probably 2 payrolls to run before any cash comes in. If it's a direct to shareholder business, then it shouldn't be too much of a problem if there's surplus cash, as long as corporation tax liabilities are borne in mind. Although there are time to pay assistance on that as well. For those with larger payrolls, it may be more of a difficult decision to take surplus cash out of the business at the moment until possibly we know how long this is going to go on for. 2 months, 4 months, 6 months. It's a tough one at the moment. There is other funding available through the banks, but that may not be as easy as the government have made out to obtain that.
Thanks, Nick. So anyone who is using ourselves to do the payroll, what I would say is the key things we need to know when you're sending any payroll information in is going to be who has been furloughed. That's going to be the first question, and when they were actually furloughed. The second question is going to potentially be, if you are furloughing, are you looking at just paying the 80% grant funded amount, or are you going to be paying the full salary? If you're just paying the 80%, that is what will need to be processed on the payroll. So on that basis, we'll need to know that as the calculations are done. If you've done the calculations, that's fine. Send those across. If you're looking at us doing the calculations again, that's fine. We can look through that and get the details to check what is going to be paid. There may be times where when you sent the information in, we may need to start coming back to you a little more than we do normally, just to make sure that everything is going to track through and that everything fits together. I think this is one of those times in life where we're going to have to really work together to make sure everything goes through together, and then it hopefully keeps your team intact for when times do improve. From a payment to your team's point of view, I've got a question about staff being friends and whether you cannot pay until you get the money through. To be honest, it will depend on your cash flow. If you can pay them, I'd probably recommend paying them when you're meant to pay people. If cash flow just really doesn't allow for that, I'd probably be saying talk to your employees, agree with them what you will be doing, how you will be doing it, and at that getting something in writing just so that kind of all parties know exactly what the position is. I don't know whether you've got any additional bits on that, Nick, from a payment side of things, of actually paying team members.
I think that's it. It's a lot is because of the unusual nature of what's going on at the moment. It's still bearing in mind employment law and employment contracts. So if there's anything that is going to change things from the norm, then it's best if it's down in writing and agreed by both parties, so that you've got the legal compliance going forward as well.
Cool. So to confirm, for directors, we will be looking at putting the claim in, assuming you've confirmed your furloughed. So the main thing is, let us know that you are furloughing yourself as a director, and on that basis, we will be making sure that a claim is put in. Now, next one, if I pay 100% of salaries for this month and backdate for the claim to each person's furlough date, can I then just pay 80% from next month? I think this just comes down to what you've agreed with the team member. There's nothing that I've seen anywhere that says by paying 100% in the first month and then going to 80% is banned. There's nothing that I've seen that allows you not to do that. The main thing I'd probably just be saying is get it agreed in writing with your employees that they're happy. I think there's possibly going to be a few people like that, because obviously this has happened halfway through the month. It's taken us all a moment to get in control of what's happening. So to agree with that with your team, I would say is not a problem, but I'd possibly just say get something in writing.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, there's no requirement to pay anything other than the 80%. So anything on top of that is just between the employer and the employees.
So from our point of view, that's not a problem. I'd say just get it in writing with the employees that is what is going to happen. Potentially that may be something that continues moving forward if this is extended, obviously. Having run the payroll for this month on 100%, will I be able to claim the overpayment back? I'm not quite sure what is meant by the overpayment, apart from the 20% that you've not been able to claim back from the furlough part, the government grant. If it's already been paid, I'd potentially say that's potentially a conversation with your employees, but I'd probably say maybe not, as that's already a payroll that's been done and in place. If it's not been paid yet, if payroll's not been finalised, then potentially there is the option there that you can rerun the payroll with the amended figures and then work from those amended figures. But if it's all been run and all been paid, there's not necessarily any overpayment. It's just that you paid the full salary rather than paid the grant payment, and it will potentially also depend what date you actually furloughed those employees, because if you only furloughed them a week ago, they will have been entitled to 3 weeks or 3/4 of the month's full salary, and it's only the last week that would have been able to be claimed back. So it depends whether you're literally going back to the 1st of March and using the provision to say from the 1st of March we're furloughing, or whether it's partway through the month. Don't know what your thoughts on.
No, I would think that it certainly depends on the point at which the employees stop working. That would be the point from when the regulations come in. So before that, they'd be entitled to the 100%. And I would think from a legal point of view, although we need to go to an HR specialist for that once it's paid, and there's probably little scope for any clawback for the 20%, to say if it was just to cover 1 week's worth. But going forward, then it would be easily reasonable to drop down to 80% for everybody. But I think for this March itself, it would need to be a bit more specific on that as to when these people stop working.
Cool. So I think we're both in similar sort of thing. One comment I've had from someone who has listening today is just let us know that they've had their small business rates relief grant paperwork come through and submitted their application, and they're expecting money by the 10th of April. So obviously from that point of view, if you have premises, if you have businesses, that you are going to be entitled to some of these grants. Hopefully you've been getting things from the local authorities in your area, because I know we have had a couple of clients who've said that they've had the letters come through. If you get those grants in, there is different grants. I think the small business one is 10,000 and there's also ones up to 25,000. So it may be, if you can get those grant claims through, you may be able to get that money into your bank account sooner rather than later, which just helps with that cash flow point of view before these 80% grants come in for the employee scheme. And that may just kind of give you that additional funding to help kind of get over the next 2-3 weeks, especially if you're not getting much income into the bank at the moment.
Yeah, so from that, it seems that is going to be the first actual receipt of money coming through of all the assistance schemes that they've mentioned so far.
So I think that's all the questions. So did anyone else have any questions that they wanted to pose at this point? Obviously, we are around this afternoon, next couple of days. So obviously, if any other questions do come to mind, or what if this, what if that, then let us know. As things do start to come out and the application process is available to be using, we'll let you know, so that obviously these processes can get started, because the sooner an application goes in, the sooner the money will follow. So it's just really, we're keeping on top of it. So do make sure you're on our newsletters, or keep a lookout on our social media, because we're trying to get things out probably, I think, daily at the minute. You'll probably be getting emails from us, which hopefully is getting the information to you, so you can just see exactly where things are, when you can be doing different bits. And all of these calls have been recorded, so if you didn't listen in last week, we did do a full briefing on everything that was available, and I think that was on the email this morning. So if you've not listened to that and just want to know what grants may be available, if you've got premises and what other aspects are in, then please do have a listen to that. That will show you all the different areas that you might have not considered yet, to get some assistance. And hopefully we can get through this all together, and we'll be seeing a very profitable end of the year when all this has actually kind of been done and dusted. So it looks like that is kind of most of the questions. So if there is anything else, drop us a note. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. We are working through, hopefully, everyone as efficiently as possible to get everyone's questions answered. And it probably just leaves me to kind of say, stay at home, stay safe, look after yourselves and your families. And we'll hopefully speak to you soon on different matters as things arise over the next week, couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of months. And yeah, look after yourselves. Have a great afternoon, and I'll let you go and all enjoy your lunch if you've not already had some yet. Was that a hand up? No, lower hand. So that's cool. Okay, well, have a great afternoon. Thank you. Bye.